In a book called The Mind's Best Work by David Perkins, which I have to say is one of the worst covers I've ever seen in a book in my entire life, but the book itself is quite good. What he talks about, he's talking about creativity and art practice, and one of the interesting phenomena he points out, well, it does several things actually. He critiques a kind of romantic view of creativity as the sort of descent of the muse, in which creativity is posited as this highly separate, highly unusual state that only certain individuals could enter into, and to enter into it you have to pass some kind of cognitive threshold into this highly unusual, highly charged state. So he mounts a critique of that, including a critique of how creative moments are often described, and indeed self-described. So, for example, we tend to have this understanding of creativity, in which there is this sudden illuminating flash. He critiques that to a certain extent. He says that may be our memory of it, even a very recent memory of it. But quite often there's a lot of precursors to moments of realization, like those illuminated moments. So he might critique about that. The other thing he talks about, which I think is really interesting, is about how, whilst we might regard creativity as being in a very different state, it's, he says, an extension of much more readily available and routine mental states and behaviors, really. And he places it on a scale of perception, really, to do with simple things like noticing and being aware of, which distinguishes those two things. So, if you step outside of your house and you've noticed that one of the tires in your car is flat, I think this is the example he gives, you know, something has happened there. A cognitive process has taken place in which the elements of your world have assembled themselves together, have certain salient elements of that assembly have become obvious to you, have made themselves aware, have made themselves available to you, and you become aware of them. So you've noticed that your car has got a flat tire. And he also talks about recognition in ways that I've spoken about before, I suspect. So he says that these things, these very routine procedures of simply seeing something, being aware of something, noticing something, and then moving on upwards toward processes that we tend to think of as more creative, like seeing solutions to simple problems, seeing patterns, seeing wholes where there would be parts, realizing quite complex patterns. And at a certain point, although it's not a clearly defined point, that ability to do that would be perhaps recognizably creative. So what he seems to be saying is that the romantic distinction between routine cognitive and behavioral processes, and those processes we consider creative, is not one of quality. It's simply a scale difference and mastication difference.